25 cents each. In-store only. Offer ends 9/19 while supplies last. Limit 6. School on, save on at Staples.
Let's go to Jim Talamonte. He's in the AM 560 Traffic Center.
In Glenella this morning, a collision has Butterfield closed between Lambert and Park Boulevard. Tri-State Tollway southbound traffic still jammed. I-80 to Holstead. There's cleanup going on after a truck fire. The right lane is blocked. Inbound Kennedy, delay start at Canfield. It's 24 minutes, O'Hare to downtown. Outbound 20. Inbound Eisenhower, traffic gets heavy from Wolf to First Avenue. The drive time is 33 minutes, 390 to downtown. Stevenson, 30 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. Inbound Ryan, it's heavy 79th to the Skyway, and then again at 18. 19 minutes, 95th to downtown. Bishop Ford inbound, slow at 103rd. It's 19 minutes, 8094 to the merge. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer show continues. Now your official Chicagoland weather forecast with meteorologist Steve Williams.
Sunny and hazy today, a very warm day, high 83, partly cloudy tonight, low 60, partly sunny for tomorrow, breezy in the morning, a nice afternoon, the daytime high tomorrow at 67. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
It's currently 61 degrees. Your next news update in 30 minutes. Continuous coverage of news, traffic, and weather at 560theanswer.com. I'm Elisa Z. Chicago's Morning Answer continues on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. We haven't gotten to this yet, but it's important. We won't get a lot of media attention because the media is basically comprised of know-nothings when it comes to policy that is at all complicated. It's all horse race all the time. But President Trump signed an executive order to lower prescription drug prices over the weekend, and this is to bring prescription drug prices for Americans in line with what Big Pharma charges foreign countries for the same drugs. This is not exactly a market reform, but it's, I would argue, about as close as you can get to one by executive order, given the construct of our Medicare system, the government's involvement as the largest purchaser of healthcare before Obamacare, much less subsequently. For more on the topic, we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Gerard Gianoli, neurootologist at the Ear and Balance Institute and a clinical associate professor at Tulane University School of Medicine. He has written on the topic in the context of drug and vaccine innovation. Dr. Gianoli, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
What's your perspective? I read your piece at realclearhealth.com, which was quite good. But your perspective on Trump's executive order, I don't think is exactly mine as I just described it. What's your perspective?
Yes, sir. My feelings are, as far as when we're talking about a free market, there's no way to get a coerced free market. The best thing you can do is remove restrictions. Whenever in the executive order that Trump just enacted, which is on September 13th, basically installs price controls on the drug manufacturers, which will give a short-term benefit and that will have lower prices. But long-term, it's going to, inhibit any sort of research, any sort of development of new drugs, that kind of thing. Because one, there's going to be less money and there's less profit motive. It's also going to lead to shortages of the current drugs, black markets, waiting lines, and eventually rationing. Right now, I don't know if most people don't realize this, but in the hospital, Medicare Part B basically has price controls for a bunch of different medications you use in the hospital. And since they did that, going back maybe about 15 years ago, we started having shortages of drugs in the hospitals. And probably the best example is IV saline, also known as salt water. It's hard to believe, but we have a shortage of salt water on a regular basis in the hospitals, and it's because of these price controls.
Look, I see. I agree with you. In the famous distillation of what you're describing by Milton Friedman, if you put the government in charge of the Sahara Desert in 4 years, it would be out of sand. So yeah,
exactly.
I totally get it. But in this instance, though, again, given the limited latitude President had, to say you're going to charge Americans the same thing as the negotiated price that you're charging for foreign consumers, well, that price was negotiated between the government and these foreign governments and Big Pharma. So it's not exactly a price control. It's more of an indexing prices for Americans to the negotiated prices between pharma and foreign governments, isn't it?
You're absolutely right. It's not exactly price controls, but it's essentially a price control. It's a different type of price control. It's a floating price control. And I suspect what you're going to see is what they charge other countries is going to go up rather than go down.
Well, and the problem that you have, as I know you understand, is that you're in a system that is beset by price controls with respect to reimbursement rates and the arbitrary setting of said rates. And so then Big Pharma manipulates those rates with private insurers jacking those way up so that they can make up the difference and still make a profit when it comes to the reimbursement rates they get for Medicaid and Medicare.
Right. The whole thing is the best description I've ever heard is Scott Gottlieb called it kabuki pricing.
Yeah.
The thing that a lot of people don't realize is the main reason for the surge in prices over the last 10 years or so has been the development of the pharmacy benefit managers. They're very poorly understood by most of the population, but you go back about early 2000s, pharmacy benefit managers were these small companies that acted as middlemen getting the drugs from the big pharma to the drugstores and the patients. They really didn't add much in the way of pricing. They just acted as the middlemen. Over the last 10, 15 years, these guys have become behemoths. And they've also consolidated. Back in the early 2000s, there was more than 60 of these PBMs. Now there's less than 30, and there's 3 of them that control more than 80% of American drug supply. And so what's happened is, and they're owned by United Healthcare, Express Scripts, and CVS. And so what's happened is they've raised the prices while what is being charged ultimately, or what they're actually getting paid, the big pharma, has stayed relatively flat, especially over the last 5 years or so. And all of the extra money is going to these PBMs.
And that's a lot of money.
That's a huge.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, prescription drugs have, generally speaking, doubled in the last decade, haven't they, in terms of prices?
I don't know exactly. It's been real acute over the last 5 years. And if you look at some things like epinephrine, that if you get generic epinephrine, you can get it for like 50 cents a dose. But if you get an EpiPen, it had shot up to like $600,
right,
which is essentially the same medication. And it's because of this PBM manipulation that the prices have gone up.
And one of the things that you do like, per your piece, is the executive order that Trump signed in the direction of transparency. So customers have a little bit better sense of what they're really paying.
Oh, absolutely. And what you're going to see is when there is transparency, you're going to see immense pressure on the PBMs because they're making money hand over fist, and they're going to have a lot of pressure to devolve. I mean, there's going to be a lot of calls once you see what's going on, because as of up till now, it's been completely secret. They've fought this tooth and nail to get this uncovered, saying it's proprietary, et cetera. And the reality is they're just, fleecing the public.
And it's interesting. It's a good perspective, I think, you offer to put this in context of vaccine innovation because, of course, of COVID, and to say, the way to facilitate vaccine innovation, generally speaking, Operation Warp Speed is sort of an anomalous situation, but generally speaking, and drug innovation generally speaking, is to take this time to rethink how we do healthcare, the health insurance system altogether in this country because of the Rube Goldberg nature of it. You have these problems, these strictures that and the way the system is comprised that retard incentives for innovation across the board, life-saving innovations.
Well, I would also add it also distorts incentives. A Rube Goldberg is a good description of what we have in healthcare, and it's every time we have a problem that props up, the government comes in, makes a diktat of some sort that fixes that but creates three more problems. Mm-hmm. And then there's more initiation of doing things to fix those three problems that create three problems each. And that's where we've developed in medicine over the course of my career. If we could go back to how medicine was run as a business back in the 80s, you would see prices drop dramatically. For example, if you had all the individuals pay for their own drugs and there was no insurance or Medicare coverage, you'd see a couple things happen. One is you'd see the prices drop dramatically because people refuse to pay these ridiculous prices. The other thing you'd see is you would see a lot patients on a lot less medications. I will tell you that it's not unusual for a patient to show up in my office and be on more than 20 different medications.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ludicrous. If they had to pay for all those, they'd be going to their doctor saying, gee, do I really need to be on all of these medicines? I can't afford this. Or, look, I can pay for 5 of these. Cut out whatever else you don't think I need to be. The problem is the doctors, because they know the patients don't have to pay for it, boom, here's another pill, here's another pill. If you look at the United States versus the rest of the world, not only do we produce the most amount of medications, we also consume the most.
Yeah, there's been some great documentaries on prescription drugs and our therapeutic culture. Prescription Thugs was a good one, I remember, but I've watched 3 or 4 of those that are speaking to the very problem that you're describing. And the larger problem, too, I think was nicely summarized by Steve Forbes when he said, in every other industry, you know what the price of something is, and except healthcare, that's the only industry where nobody knows what the price of anything is. And
absolutely. And
then secondly, in every other industry, when you get more demand for your good or service, that is good news. In healthcare, we call that a crisis.
That's right.
And
very true.
So it speaks to what you were talking about perverted incentives and conflicting rules and regulations.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's unique about my practice is we got out of the insurance game, in 2004. And we just strictly charge cash. We give the patients their HCFA form so they can submit to their own insurance company, get reimbursed. And the nice thing about the way we have things set up is the patients know how much it's going to cost even before they schedule the visit. And then they all get charged the same. There's no, if you go to another doctor's office, you don't know what you're getting charged until 3 months afterwards. 2, 5 different people get charged 5 different prices. And 3, you have no idea. You wouldn't know whether you wanted it based on the price or not. Whereas for my office, you can know ahead of time, is it worth it for me to go? I can decide or not, or I can go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it's very free market based.
And I think, get your perspective, but it seems like we're going to see more and more of these market innovations. The model that you're describing, the Oklahoma Surgery Center is another example. There's other examples of medical practitioners like yourself dropping out of essentially the government-run, effectively healthcare system.
Yeah, it's basically it's a harder route because it's easy to say, I'll accept all the insurances and the patients will just roll in. But at the same time, too, it's selling your soul out, if you ask me. I could make a whole lot more money if I accepted all the insurances, but I don't think it is appropriate, and ethically I couldn't accept it.
He is Dr. Gerard Gianoli. He's a neurootologist at the Ear and Balance Institute, and he is a clinical associate professor at Tulane University School of Medicine as well. Dr. Gianoli, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Y'all have a great day.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You've made the switch, and it feels so good. You've switched to Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Safety. It's so important at your industrial facility. You need to keep your personnel safe and meet OSHA requirements. One problem with your ladders, platforms, or safety guards, and you could be facing costly fines. Vans Industrial helps you meet OSHA standards to keep your employees safe.
Hi, I'm Dave Van Camp, president of Vans Industrial. As a business owner, I realize the importance of keeping my employees safe, and I'm here to offer my expertise. Vans Industrial is a specialty contractor uniquely equipped to design, fabricate, and install safety equipment